The sun cast a golden hue over the city as Elijah Brooks stepped out of his sleek, black sedan, adjusting the cuffs of his tailored tuxedo. The evening air was crisp, carrying with it the subtle aroma of blooming jasmine and the distant hum of city life. Elijah took a deep breath, savoring the moment. Tonight was special. Leclerc, the city's most exclusive restaurant, stood before him, a modern architectural marvel with its glass facade reflecting the twilight sky. Inside, the soft clinking of glasses and murmured conversations hinted at the elegance within. Elijah had been here before, but tonight he was incognito, choosing to experience the establishment as any other patron would. As he approached the entrance, the doorman offered a polite nod, opening the door to reveal the ambient warmth of the interior. The maitre d', a tall man with a meticulously groomed beard, stood behind a polished podium, scanning the reservation list. "Good evening," Elijah greeted, his voice smooth and confident. "Reservation for Brooks." Elijah Brooks. The maitre d' glanced up, his eyes briefly widening before he masked his surprise. "Ah, yes, Mr. Brooks, right this way." Elijah followed him through the opulent dining area, noting the subtle glances from other patrons. He was accustomed to the attention. His reputation as a renowned food critic often preceded him. However, tonight he hoped for anonymity. They reached a secluded table by the window, offering a panoramic view of the city skyline. Elijah settled into the plush chair, the linen napkin unfolding effortlessly onto his lap. The maitre d' handed him a leather-bound menu. "Your server will be with you shortly," he said before retreating. Moments later, a young waiter approached, his posture rigid, eyes averted. He placed a glass of water on the table without a word. Elijah looked up, offering a friendly smile. "Good evening." The waiter hesitated, then mumbled, "Evening," before turning away. Puzzled, Elijah observed as the waiter attended to other tables. His demeanor markedly different, smiling, engaging, attentive. When he returned to Elijah's table, his tone remained curt. "Ready to order?" "Yes," Elijah replied, maintaining his composure. "I'll start with the seared scallops, followed by the filet mignon, medium rare." The waiter scribbled on his notepad, nodding without making eye contact. "Anything to drink?" "A glass of your finest red wine, please." Without a response, the waiter turned on his heel and walked away. Elijah sat back, reflecting on the interaction. It wasn't the first time he'd encountered such behavior, but it always left a bitter taste. He glanced around the room, noting the diverse clientele and the attentive service they received. The disparity was glaring. As he waited, the sommelier approached, presenting a bottle with a flourish. "Our 2015 Chateau Margaux, sir." Elijah nodded appreciatively. "Excellent choice." The sommelier poured a sample, which Elijah tasted and approved. The wine flowed into his glass, its rich aroma enveloping him. The first course arrived, seared scallops artfully arranged on a bed of risotto. Elijah took a bite, savoring the delicate balance of flavors. He made mental notes, his critic's mind analyzing every element. Between courses, he observed the staff, noting the synchronized dance of service. Yet his waiter remained distant, his interactions with Elijah devoid of warmth. The main course arrived, the filet mignon cooked to perfection. Elijah couldn't deny the culinary excellence, but the service marred the experience. As dessert menus were distributed, the waiter bypassed Elijah's table. He raised an eyebrow, signaling the maitre d'. "Is there a problem with my service?" Elijah inquired. The maitre d' looked taken aback. "Not at all, sir." "Is there something amiss?" Elijah gestured subtly. "I've noticed a certain reluctance from my server." The maitre d' paled slightly. "I apologize, Mr. Brooks. I'll address it immediately." Elijah nodded, appreciating the prompt response. After dessert, a decadent chocolate soufflé, Elijah requested the check. The maitre d' returned, the bill in hand, along with a note. "From our head chef with his compliments," he said, handing over the note. Elijah unfolded it, reading the elegant script. "Mr. Brooks, your presence honors us. We hope your experience met your expectations. Please accept this meal on the house." Elijah smiled, touched by the gesture. He left a generous tip, ensuring it reached the kitchen staff. As he exited, the maitre d' held the door open. "We hope to see you again soon, Mr. Brooks." Elijah stepped into the night, the city's lights shimmering around him. He pulled out his phone, opening his notes app, and began typing. Leclerc offers an exquisite culinary journey, marred only by the occasional lapse in service, a reminder that excellence extends beyond the plate. The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of Leclerc, illuminating the intricate gold-trimmed walls and casting long shadows across the polished floors of the dining room. The atmosphere, usually calm and composed, had turned electric with tension. Staff members whispered urgently behind the espresso bar. Busboys exchanged wide-eyed glances, and waiters moved in nervous jolts instead of their usual fluid choreography. The head chef, Laurent, a meticulous Frenchman known for his steely demeanor and perfectionist standards, burst through the kitchen doors, apron still draped around his neck, waving a phone in his trembling hand. Everyone now in the dining room. "Immediately!" he barked. His voice, sharp and filled with panic, silenced the entire restaurant. Waiters and hostesses gathered, exchanging puzzled looks, and even Travis, the senior server who had been with the restaurant for 4 years, reluctantly left his half-finished cappuccino to join the circle. Laurent's face was pale. Normally a man of restrained emotion, today he looked as if he'd seen a ghost. "We've been reviewed," he said breathlessly, raising the phone high so the group could see. Not just by anyone, Elijah Brooks. The Elijah Brooks. The room fell deathly silent. A single gasp escaped the new hostess. Even the dishwasher paused. Standing at the kitchen entrance with wet gloves dangling at his side, Travis squinted, confusion knitting his brows. "Elijah Brooks?" he scoffed. "You're joking. He's like a ghost. He doesn't just walk in off the street, especially not here." He gave a short, nervous laugh, glancing around as if looking for backup. But none came. Laurent's glare silenced him. "No joke," Laurent hissed, jabbing at his phone. "He came, he dined, and he left us this." He swiped the screen and held it out. The homepage of a major review site was open. Brooks's personal blog, followed by millions. The latest post was titled in bold, unmistakable font, "The Taste of Disrespect." Underneath, a photo, Elijah Brooks, regal in his tuxedo, standing before Leclerc, one hand tucked in his pocket, the other pointing casually to a gold plaque beside the door. The image zoomed in to reveal the engraved words. Contributor and founding investor, Elijah Brooks. A stunned silence fell over the room like a guillotine. Travis felt the blood drain from his face. "No," he whispered. That can't be real. That guy, last night I thought he was some random guest trying to pull something. I thought he didn't belong here." Laurent rounded on him, eyes blazing. "He built this place. He was one of the original investors. He's the reason we exist, and you turned him away like trash." The fury in Laurent's voice echoed off the marble walls. The staff stared at Travis, the weight of collective disappointment and anger bearing down on him. Some shook their heads. Others looked away in disgust. The maitre d' stepped forward, voice tight with restraint. "Travis, you told him we didn't have a table. You dismissed his reservation. You mocked him." Travis opened his mouth, then closed it. He had no defense. Laurent turned back to the phone, reading aloud from Elijah's review. Leclerc's menu remains elegant. The filet mignon was divine, but what lingers longer than the flavors is the taste of something. Far more bitter, disrespect. Discrimination has no place on the plate, nor in the hands that serve it. Excellence without humanity is a facade. He paused, his voice thick. A restaurant's true flavor lies in how it treats every guest. He lowered the phone, and the silence that followed was heavier than before. Within hours, the fallout began. The review had already gone viral. Twitter was ablaze. Food blogs, influencers, and media outlets picked up the story, each headline more damning than the last. Critic exposes high-end racism. Restaurant snubs its own investor. Brooks burns Leclerc with fiery review. Calls flooded in, some canceling reservations, others demanding statements. The restaurant's 5-star rating, once its proud badge, began to crumble, one scathing comment at a time. Yelp reviews poured in, not from diners, but from outraged citizens who shared screenshots of Brooks's post, condemning Leclerc for elitism, prejudice, and hypocrisy. The restaurant's Instagram page was bombarded with hashtags. Elijah deserves better? Yeah, respect on the menu? Dine with dignity? By midday, the owner of Leclerc, Marcus de Vries, who rarely stepped foot in the restaurant, stormed in through the back door. Face flushed, tie loosened, he called an emergency meeting in the wine cellar. "This is a PR disaster," he growled. "The board is furious." Elijah isn't just any investor. He's a silent partner with real weight. And now he's publicly humiliated us. He glared around the room. Who was responsible for this? All eyes turned to Travis. Travis, who had been slumped in the corner, stood rigid. His throat was dry. I didn't recognize him," he stammered. "I didn't know. You didn't need to know," Marcus thundered. "You treated a guest with disrespect. You saw a well-dressed black man and assumed he didn't belong. And now we're paying the price." He slammed his fist on the table. "Do you know how much one bad review from Brooks costs us? He's syndicated. His opinion shapes investors, Michelin scouts, media partnerships." Laurent folded his arms. "He didn't even raise his voice, Marcus." He walked out quietly. Then he set fire to us with a single sentence. Marcus rubbed his temples, breathing heavily. "We'll issue an apology," he finally said. "We'll contact his team. Offer him anything. Free meals, press statements, a public gesture." But the damage had already been done. Elijah Brooks hadn't replied to any of the restaurant's attempts to reach him. His post spoke for itself, and he didn't need to say anything else. The public had already made up its mind. That night, Leclerc was half empty. The golden glow of its chandeliers reflected off untouched wine glasses and silent tables. The soft background music played to a quiet void. The servers walked like ghosts, uncertain and ashamed. Even the maître d', once proud and upright, greeted guests with a weariness that hadn't been there before. Travis remained in the back, seated alone on a crate in the stockroom, staring blankly at the floor. His name, once associated with the finest service in the district, was now etched into this scandal. He couldn't stop replaying the moment. The quiet way Elijah had spoken, the way he hadn't fought back, the calm dignity in his voice. It was unbearable. He pulled out his phone and reread the review. And then the comments. People sharing their own stories of subtle discrimination, of being made to feel unwelcome, of being judged by appearance before anything else. His hands trembled. He had done that. He had contributed to a culture he thought didn't exist in his world, but it did. And now he saw it. That night, Elijah posted just one quiet sentence on his personal feed. "Respect is not something you earn by wearing a name tag. It's something you show first." No hashtags, no rage, just truth. At Leclerc, the walls still glittered, the floors still shone, and the menu remained untouched in its perfection. But something fundamental had changed. The illusion of superiority had cracked, and for the first time, the staff realized that the restaurant's most valuable ingredient wasn't in the kitchen. It was in the heart. It didn't take long for the storm to build. As soon as Elijah's review went viral, it became clear that the damage would be swift, but the extent of it was staggering. It wasn't just the scathing words of the review itself, though those were brutal. It was the deep, systemic weight of what had happened. The comments flooded in by the thousands, and with each passing hour, the restaurant's reputation plummeted further into the abyss. By late afternoon, the tables at Leclerc, that had once been filled with the city's elite, now stood empty, unclaimed and abandoned. Reservation after reservation was canceled. Phone lines were buzzing non-stop with irate callers who demanded answers. Influencers, once known for their loyalty to the establishment, began sharing screenshots of the review and voicing their own disgust. Using hashtags like "I'll boycott Leclerc" and "Respect on the menu," social media erupted in outrage, not only at the treatment of Elijah, but at the blatant disregard for hospitality and decency by the staff. Many in the public viewed the entire episode as more than a personal affront to one man. It became a symbol of something larger, the quiet but pervasive prejudice that thrived behind the polished doors of the fine dining world. The restaurant's social media manager had spent hours responding to negative comments, trying to quell the public outcry with empty promises and generic apologies. But the flood of criticism was relentless. They posted statements of regret, emphasizing how the incident was an isolated occurrence and how the staff was being disciplined. But it wasn't enough. Elijah, the man at the center of it all, had stayed silent, refusing all press interviews, declining offers to explain his side further. He posted no follow-up. Instead, his social media remained eerily quiet. There was no satisfaction in his silence, no evident joy in the backlash his review had caused. There was only one post, a brief and simple statement that, despite being so small, carried a weight that shook everyone who saw it. Respect is the first ingredient of excellence. That was all. No apology, no call to action, just a quiet declaration of principle. The phone calls continued into the night. Marcus DeVries, the restaurant's owner, paced back and forth in his office, the glow from his computer screen lighting his exhausted face. The board was furious. He could hear their voices from the other side of the conference room. Men and women whose investments in Leclerc were in the millions, who had always seen the restaurant as a guaranteed success. Now they were demanding explanations, demanding answers. The fallout from Elijah's post wasn't just a hit to their pride, it was a financial disaster. The restaurant's entire image had been built on exclusivity, perfection, and prestige. And now it seemed that image was shattered. Meanwhile, Travis sat in the break room staring out the window. His hands were shaking. He hadn't touched his food. He barely registered the dull hum of the kitchen behind him. The gravity of what he'd done was just starting to hit him, and it was suffocating. How had he allowed something so small to spiral into something so massive? Elijah wasn't just a guest. He wasn't just a critic. He was a part of the fabric of this place. His influence, his ownership stake, was why Leclerc had existed in the first place. And yet Travis had dismissed him, failed to see him for what he truly was. In his mind, all he had seen was an unfamiliar black man in a tuxedo, a man who didn't look like the others, who usually graced the restaurant's dining room. His prejudice had been subtle, but it had been there, unmistakable. He had assumed, because of the way Elijah looked, that he didn't belong. Now, sitting alone with the weight of his actions, Travis realized how deep his error went. It wasn't just about insulting a guest. It wasn't even about the financial toll the restaurant was now suffering. It was about the damage done to the reputation of a place he'd once been so proud to work for. He'd believed in Leclerc, believed in the image it projected. He had thought that this was what success looked like, what the world wanted to see. Now all of it felt hollow, stripped away by one mistake. In the midst of the chaos, Marcus called him into the office. The walk through the kitchen to the back office felt like a lifetime. Travis's feet felt heavy with each step, his thoughts spiraling uncontrollably. As he entered the office, Marcus stood behind his desk, hands clasped in front of him. His normally immaculate suit was rumpled, and his face was drawn with exhaustion. "Travis, sit down." The words were short, clipped. Travis took a seat, but he couldn't meet Marcus's eyes. "Do you understand the magnitude of what you've done?" Marcus asked, his voice tight with frustration. "This isn't just a simple mistake. You've tarnished the reputation of this restaurant, and more importantly, you've hurt someone we should have been honoring. This place was built on respect, and now we're paying the price for that lack of respect." Travis nodded mutely, feeling the weight of Marcus's words land on him like an anchor. He wanted to say something to explain himself, but there were no words. What could he possibly say? Marcus continued, his voice softer now, tinged with disappointment. "You're suspended, effective immediately. You'll stay home for the next 2 weeks, and during that time, you'll be reflecting on what happened and how you can make things right. We can't just sweep this under the rug. We're in damage control mode now, and everything we do from here on out is critical." "I understand," Travis said, his voice barely above a whisper. I never meant for any of this to happen." Marcus held up a hand. "I know you didn't, but intent doesn't matter right now. It's the outcome that's speaking for itself. We're offering Elijah a public apology, but I don't know if that will even be enough. He's not responding to us, and I can't say I blame him." Travis sat in stunned silence, trying to process the gravity of Marcus's words. He couldn't help but think of the review, the way it had been phrased, the quiet condemnation that seemed to echo in every word. It wasn't just a rebuke, it was a call for change. Elijah hadn't lashed out with anger or fire. He had simply stated the truth that Travis hadn't seen until it was too late. The following days felt like a blur. Travis spent his suspension in a haze of guilt, staring at the walls of his apartment as the weight of his actions threatened to drown him. His phone remained silent and his inbox stayed empty. The restaurant had shifted into damage control mode, trying to appease clients, rebuild what had been lost, and save the reputation they had worked so hard to build. But even as the weeks dragged on, the damage seemed permanent, and still Elijah Brooks remained silent. The only sign of life from him was a new post, a simple quote that seemed to capture everything he had been trying to say. It's not enough to be right. You have to be kind too. By the time Travis returned to work, LeClaire was a very different place. The once pristine, polished image of the restaurant had become a more somber one. The luxury, the exclusivity, all felt like a facade now. It was as if the walls themselves had absorbed the collective shame of that moment. And though things would go on, they would never quite be the same. Elijah's quiet words, spoken through a single review, through silence, through truth, had created a shift that no apology could undo. It had opened a door, one that the restaurant's management couldn't shut again. No one would ever look at the plates, the decor, or the fine wine the same way again. They had learned the hard way that true excellence wasn't about serving the finest food or wearing the best suits. It was about something deeper. It was about respect. Weeks had passed since the scandal rocked LeClaire, and the restaurant had undergone a transformation. It wasn't just the physical changes, the freshly polished floors and the updated decor. It was the quiet reshaping of its culture. Marcus DeVries had done everything he could to salvage the legacy of the restaurant. But he knew that it wasn't just about fixing the public relations disaster. It was about addressing the systemic issues that had plagued his establishment for years. What had started as a simple misjudgment had exploded into something far bigger, forcing the restaurant to confront its own weaknesses. Elijah Brooks, despite the personal cost, had returned to the restaurant, this time in a new role as a silent partner. It wasn't about the money, of course. He had enough of that. His return was about something much more profound. He had always believed in the idea of LeClaire, but now, his involvement was an opportunity to bring real change. With him came new policies that would become the foundation for the future. Diversity training was mandatory for every member of staff. No longer would guests be judged by their appearance. Every employee, from the waitstaff to the kitchen crew, would be educated on the nuances of privilege, race, and bias, with a focus on how to create an environment that was both inclusive and respectful. The leadership structure of the restaurant shifted too. Marcus, while still the face of LeClaire, had made the bold decision to step back from day-to-day operations, allowing Elijah to take the reins. It was a symbolic gesture, one that sent a clear message to the staff and the world. The restaurant was no longer just a luxury establishment. It was a place where respect, kindness, and equality would take priority. The underlying message was simple. The excellence of a restaurant could never be measured just by the quality of its food. It had to be measured by how it treated people. All people. Travis's return to work was the hardest part of the transition. He had been suspended, and the shame of his actions had eaten away at him. He spent those weeks alone, reflecting on everything that had happened. There were days when he couldn't bring himself to leave his apartment, afraid of facing the world and the consequences of his ignorance. But there came a point when he realized that running away wasn't the answer. He had to own up to what he had done, to learn from it and make it right. And so when the time came, he walked back into LeClaire, ready to start over. But starting over wasn't easy. He was given a second chance, not as a front-of-house employee, not as someone who could make the decisions, but as a busboy. It was a humbling position, but it was the only one that made sense. He knew he had to start at the bottom, to work hard, to show everyone that he had learned from his mistakes. Every day was a lesson. He listened. He observed. He learned from the people around him, especially from those who had suffered because of his actions. The cooks who had always been treated as invisible. The servers who had to smile and nod no matter what they endured. He spent hours learning about the rich history of the restaurant, its roots in diversity, and the many ways that it had unintentionally alienated the very people it had once been built to serve. And slowly things began to change for Travis. It wasn't just the policies or the new leadership, it was his own internal shift. The weight of his past mistakes had forced him to grow. He became more aware of his actions, his words, and the way he interacted with everyone around him. He had been given a second chance, but he knew that this time he had to earn it. One evening, the restaurant was buzzing with activity. The dining room was filled with the hum of conversation, the clink of silverware, and the soft chatter of the servers as they moved through the room. There was a different atmosphere in the air, a sense of ease that hadn't been there before. It was as if the restaurant had been reborn, and the people who worked there were part of something greater than themselves. Then, as he was clearing a table near the front of the room, Travis saw him. Elijah Brooks was sitting at a table near the window, his dark eyes scanning the menu. He was dressed impeccably as usual, his tuxedo sharp and precise. But this time there was something different about him. He wasn't just the critic. He wasn't just the person whose review had changed everything. He was part of the fabric of Leclerc now, a silent partner in the restaurant's future. Travis felt a knot tighten in his stomach. This was the moment when he would have to face the man whose dignity he had insulted, the man whose quiet strength had helped reshape everything he had once taken for granted. He took a deep breath, steadying himself, and walked over to the table. "Good evening, Mr. Brooks," he said, his voice calm but filled with genuine respect. "It's an honor to serve you tonight." Elijah looked up from his menu, his expression softening as his eyes met Travis's. For a moment, neither of them spoke. There was a quiet understanding between them, a moment of recognition that transcended words. Then, after a brief pause, Elijah smiled. It was a small smile, but it was warm, and it held a depth that made Travis's heart swell. "That's how you start a new recipe," Elijah said, his voice steady and kind. Travis nodded, feeling the weight of Elijah's words settle deep within him. This wasn't just a line, it was a lesson, one that Travis would carry with him forever. A new recipe wasn't just about ingredients, it was about the process. It was about the care and attention given at every stage, the respect for each part of the journey. It was about learning, growing, and never taking anything for granted. Travis turned and walked away, his heart lighter than it had been in weeks. The restaurant had changed. He had changed. And while the road to redemption was long, he was willing to take it one step at a time. Final message. Prejudice costs more than pride, and sometimes the one you mistreat owns the building you're standing in.